It's now time to warmly welcome our new friend who's been, I know, networking with aplomb through the conference.
I feel quite welcome already, by the way.
Our friend Candy from Vancouver, who was one of the first people that we reached out to as a keynote speaker when we were putting this conference program together, and who we've deliberately, as I said earlier, saved to close the conference because her material is does that integrative job of thinking about sustainable development and sustainability across all of our all aspects of career development work, which is exactly what NICEC's about. I will let Candy give you more of an insight into her own journey and background with this material. I'm sure that we're all very keen to hear what she's got to say. So let's just warmly welcome Candy Ho to the stage.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, everybody, and for bearing with me during the last little bit of the conference. I will do my best to make it fun and entertaining. And just so you know, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint at the very end. There's a QR code that I'll invite you to scan. And everything is open source because I don't want anybody to be reinventing the wheel. Please share away, please use away, and I know some of you already do. So, a little bit about me, and this particular presentation is based on my work as a faculty member of educational studies at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. I just stepped into a new role as their Chancellor's Research Chair. So I was talking to Miriam earlier because I landed a 3-year grant looking at how I can go back to K-12 to embed the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, into the curriculum. I brought my prop with me, my husband and son, and it all started when I was meeting my son's kindergarten teacher and principal who's new, and I was, really passionately talking about sustainable development, and as lovely as this principal and head teacher were, their explanation was like, oh, sustainability, yes, we're all over that, we do recycling, and then in my head I'm like, oh man, that's gonna be a school year where we work together to educate each other a little bit more on how it encompasses more than just environmental sustainability. So it's led to an impetus in this project as well. So I am basing this presentation, this keynote address, on a senior career capstone course that I've taught. Again, please feel free to use anything. And shout out to Tristram here, because Tristram was keynoting at the Connexus conference in 2020, a month before the pandemic happened. So Tristram, you saw the beginning of this, and now you get to see how much further it's expanded since the last 4 years. So I think, all of us talked, I think we have a lot of definitions to talk about a little bit. So I want to ground, first of all, what is sustainability in my context? And I went back very, very far in the 1987 original document on the Commission on Environment and Development. It's about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I'm going to come back to this idea of generation in a little bit. And in Canada, one of the things that we're working really hard towards is indigeneity, truth, and reconciliation. So I can't help but to make this connection with one of the Indigenous philosophy of the 7-generation principle, in which we need to look at the next 7 generations that's ahead of us, because the last 7 generations before us have done this for us, to pave the way in terms of sacrifices, in terms of contributions, investing in the future, so we can all be here. So thinking about what can we do for our next generation and for the 6 generations beyond that. So there's a very much a futuristic focus when you think about sustainability. We talked a lot about career. I'm going to add one more before we close the conference. So I think about career in terms of life roles. In fact, I'm taking you to the night sky because we want to look at a constellation of life roles here. So Super Civicus that I just met at the National Career Development Conference in San Diego in North America, Super Civicus and Super talked about the interaction of all the life roles that we have played, that we currently play. When you think about it, when we prepare our clients for interviews and they ask, tell me about your previous experiences and how do you think they can help you be successful, we're getting them to talk about their life roles, okay? So I'm throwing another layer here in how it all comes together. So if it doesn't make sense to you right now, it's chaotic, such is life. It's how I think, but I promise at the end, it'll all come together. So maybe what I like to do now is to walk you through a typical life role that I see in my classroom, drawn from students that I've worked with. So I want to introduce you to Zoe. Zoe is a paralegal right now. She's enrolled at KPU's paralegal program. She's a hybrid employee, working 2 to 3 days in the office and the other time working from home. She's also pretty passionate. She's a hustler, she's a freelancer, and she's got a flair for design. So most recently, she's kind of opened up her own freelancing company, helping people design websites or giving feedback, critique on what makes a good website and what doesn't. And so Zoe also is a volunteer and activist. I don't know if you've heard, but in our province of British Columbia, in the last couple of years, we have gone through some major climate disasters. There was a flood that displaced many students in the middle of the semester, in which, you know, myself as a professor had to make accommodation and talking with them about what that means to them. And then previously, the summer before, there was a heat dome that killed over 600 people, mostly from underprivileged demographic who couldn't afford air conditioning or find themselves in shelters that have a cooling system. So, you know, I see some nods in the room. It's beginning to resonate based on what we've talked about in the last 2 days as well. So Zoe is deeply concerned about the climate and our future, and she's Gen Z. So that question of, I've inherited these problems that I didn't create. You know, what's my responsibility now? So she's leveraging her website creation capability to help a couple of local not-for-profit organizations build their website and build their campaign as well. Zoe is a lifelong learner. She's about to finish her degree in humanities, but she's also, you know, taking advantage of student accounts with LinkedIn Learning because she's like, there's so much more that I need to learn. Thinking about micro-credentials as well beyond graduation is going to be a reality, not just for our students, but for all of us as we continue to learn. This venue right here is helping us do exactly that. This is really interesting as we talk about generations. Zoe is a mentor. She's mentoring her partners in her firm on an AI strategy because she's seen as the tech-savvy person of her firm. So she finds herself advising people that are more senior than her and at the same time being mentored by them as well. So we're seeing mentorship not just with the definition of age, but in terms of levels of experience and exposure to subject matter. And we're going to see a lot more than that. I don't know if she sleeps. Sometimes she has hobbies as well. So she's crafty, she's creative, and she's selling her things on Etsy. So you can see that the entrepreneurial streak, we just talked about entrepreneurship earlier, how it all comes in together. And so, you know, this is a typical client's constellation of life roles. And what I want you to do is to think about the people that you serve, the organizations that you serve, the individuals that are there. What might be in their constellation of life roles? How might they interact and shape one another is going to be a question for all of us to think about and in the context of this very topic. And so we talked about the individual. We haven't forgotten what's outside of the individual, which was a lot of the conversations that we've had for the last 2 days. COVID-19, the pandemic has changed a lot for us in terms of the way we work, live, play, and be. And also everything that we've just talked about, even alone in that last session, the environmental aspect, socioeconomical issues, and technological. So I should also mention, as of last Tuesday, I've now become the past chair of the CEREC board. And for those of you that don't know CEREC, we are a national Canadian not-for-profit organization that advances career development. We're generously funded by the Counseling Foundation of Canada, so a family foundation. And as a result, if you go look up cerec.ca, all of our resources, any e-resources, are free at your disposal. If you're interested, I'm going to put her on the spot, but Nikki had just authored a toolkit. How do you talk about careers with students in grades 4 to 12? So we also offer research and funding as well. So take a look, and one of the reports we just recently issued is called the Careers 2040. How will the 10 megatrends, so many of which are here, many of which we talked about, can influence the work that we do as career guidance professionals or career development professionals, and what does that look like? And the trends range from climate crisis, declining mental health and well-being, things like education is disrupted, reconciling with the impacts of colonialism and reconciliation, digital technology, working hybrid. If can't name all 10 of them, but you're getting the idea. So things like geopolitical conflicts, what impact does it have? But what I'm trying to emphasize that we all have a lot on the go. Probably doesn't surprise anybody. One of the 3 topics that we had just discussed is not just how do we enhance the well-being of those we serve, but also ourselves. What does that look like? It's very daunting to be a human being in this complicated time these days. So one thing for us to think about is wisdom from my doctoral supervisor, Chris Magnuson, who talked about, the challenge that we are up against is recognizing how complicated it is the world has become with the client situation. But also the subjective side of that is it's not just the event that has happened, but their interpretation, their reaction to these events are things that we have to help them address and grapple with. Because if you can imagine, take for instance, hybrid work. Some people enjoy it and welcome it, while others are like, I miss being in person with people, right? So same event, 2 different reactions. So what is the role that we can play to help our clients work through these situations? I've heard this word a lot during the last 2 days. It's the idea of hope. So Niles, Spencer Niles, Admonson, and Yoon have talked about, okay, what are we supposed to do? It's cultivating the idea of hope to empower our client to think about the possibilities that are ahead. Sometimes they can take big leaps with our help. Other times, it's showing up to the appointment and honoring it that we need to celebrate. So everybody is different, and we need to be inclusive in our strategy as well. I was at the NCDA conference where Spencer Niles was also a keynote, where he reminded me that their hope action theory, it's the idea that to generate hope, you need to take action. No matter how many, baby steps, big steps that you're taking, by taking action, you're also generating hope. So it's not one leads to another, it's an ongoing cycle that we all need to think and ponder, okay? And so with that in mind, Michael, we're gonna look at the first video. So what does it mean to instill hope and promote skills? I love that we have talked about the SDGs throughout the entire conference, and now I get to show you a very quick video in case you need a refresher in what they are. Thank you so much, Michael. So that's my first resource to share. By the way, anything that has a link in my presentation, it means that the website has already been embedded. And I find that this is just a beautiful opener for anybody that's like, where the SDG. Oh, the YouTube is still playing. Thank you so much. So you can see that the resources on the SDGs go on and on, but it's easy for me to share this with my class to just give them an introduction. So I think, Jill, you've read this in the beginning, and it's the idea that in 2015, 193 member states and countries, including Canada, including, in the UK, we've all agreed that these 17 goals represent the most pressing issues of our time and that they are interconnected. So when we tackle one particular goal, like decent work and economic growth, SDG 8, we're also alleviating the others as well. So, when we dream big, it's also a good idea for us to think, what with any of these goals, which one has a role and responsibility in it that we can leverage our values and talent toward? So I'm prompting you for some of the questions that I'm asking my students to do. And so the goals, once again, are here, but I want to point to your attention now is the 169 targets and indicators, because as you can imagine, what the heck is clean water and sanitation? How do we go about define it? So I'm going to use the one that I'm most comfortable with, which is quality education, ensuring that there's inclusive and equitable education for us all, but it's broken down into 7 targets, which means that we can better dive into what it means, what's our role and responsibility for each and every one of us. And I think we'll likely walk away, because I think there's some higher ed folks that are here that says, well, I see myself being responsible for 4.3, right? Ensuring equal access for women and men to afford quality technical vocational vet education, including university. For me, I'm seeing myself in helping to substantially increase youth and young adult capacity. So every single one of us can identify different indicators to work towards. And I think that's how we're going to tackle some of these greatest challenges. And I also use it in my class as well. And so something for all of us to think about as I dive into this is, okay, sustainable development goals, and then there's career development, which is the main sandbox that we play in. How do they align with one another? What are some of the things that they have in common? I'm constantly reminded that to honor the origin of our work in career development is towards helping underserved population find decent and meaningful living. And this goes way back from when career guidance was born in the 1800s or even before that, right? So the root of the work that we do is associated with social justice from the very, very beginning. And then by understanding or by helping our clients, those reserved, understand what is it that they can do to address these conditions of our world, we're also getting them to think about what are some of the talents, strengths that they have to contribute, to address these issues. And then finally, I think I've heard from your contribution, it's also thinking about how do they empower the communities that they are part of. So discovering their purpose, leveraging their talent, and then thinking about what service, how did they serve the communities that they are part of? Because no person is an island. When and then within my course, I ask these questions in my class, and I embed them throughout a 13-week, 3-credit course that I teach. It's a really popular senior capstone course because we only, at Kwantlen, we have small class sizes. So I have a group of 35 students. So for every class that's open, we have twice the amount of people that are trying to get to the waitlist. So after this conference, I'm probably going to go back to look at my mailbox of people that are trying to get in. And then I have to have a conversation with my dean to be like, can we open up more sections? But it's the idea of getting students to think about what's the world that they want to live in. What are some of the problems or challenges or opportunities that they see that deserve our attention? And then kind of like a funnel, it goes back to them. The responsibility points back to them. What did they see are their talents and experiences? Before 2019, before I discovered the UN SDGs, students are coming into my class and they tell me things like, oh, I'm using this capstone course because I want to apply to med school. I want to apply for a permanent job in the organization that I'm a part of. So like they have very individualistic, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to have some ideas of what they want to do. But now the conversation shifted where I tell them, I don't need to know what you want to do yet, but I want to know how you think you're serving the world or you'd like to serve the world. Then we can backtrack and talk about your careers. So ultimately, we're getting them to think about, what do you care about? Care has also been a key theme of this conference, right? It's connecting the head to the heart. We can address all issues at the same time. But if you care enough about something, you're going to dedicate your energy, your focus, and your heart toward it. That's what we're trying to get to do with our students and those reserve. And so talk to you a little bit about the senior career capstone course. If you're interested, I do in deeper dive on what this course is. So just some of the objectives. We're gonna talk about identifying artifacts that students have accumulated during their time in their education, in their other life roles, because they create e-portfolios that put these artifacts together. They do a lot of research about what possibilities awaits them in terms of work and further opportunities. Representational portfolios that allow them to showcase to employers and graduate schools. And many students have said, you know what, I didn't believe in doing an e-portfolio, but when I showed my employer or graduate school, they were like, you're the only person out of an applicant, like a pool of 100 people that have an e-portfolio. So you stood out as a result. And we know that you understand and you are integrating aspects of your life. And I'm going to show you one portfolio piece in a little bit. But at the end of their university journey, we also get them to think about, what does it mean to be educated for them? What does attaining a degree, aside from, we know that many students come to your university because of enhancing career prospect, but what else? What other reasons are there for you to attain an undergraduate education, and what are you going to do with it? And so I want to give you a couple of examples. There are a lot of career interventions that are embedded in the course. We won't have time to talk about all of them, but I've brought some examples today that really showcase the power of embedding the SDGs into a career course. So we start with a mission statement. As part of their e-portfolio, we spent a chunk of time talking about, how do you serve others? And so the key questions that we ask is, who you are as a human being. So a lot of reflective activities. What do you do? But the key question is, who are the people that you serve? How do they change as a result of the work that you do? Because if there's no change, there's no impact. And we really want students to question, what is the difference that they want to make, knowing what they know right now and knowing all of these things will change. So I do a very simple activity, and you're more than welcome to use it. This is the first draft, and I'll show you the final draft. So we start with identifying any of the values and skills that they have. And in previous lessons, they would have an understanding of what they are. Who are you doing this for? Who's your target audience? What are you expecting when you're successful? What does that look like? And then the SDG that you're progressing. So here's my example that I show to students based on this exercise, my mission statement. And then when I read this, I'm like, well, a personal mission statement is no use if you can't articulate it very, very quickly. So then the next idea is for them to keep it short and brief so that it is something that they can memorize and say to themselves right before, in times when they don't quite know what they want to do. So I want to show you, here's my long example. But a student had condensed, I expect students to be condensing theirs. So Alyssa, she is an accounting major. By the way, my course is interdisciplinary, so it's a lot of fun to teach students from science, from business, from design, from trades, and from arts and humanities. Alyssa says, I enable people to make informed decisions that they feel confident about. Okay, so then the rationale, the reflection at the bottom is Alyssa telling me, okay, what does that mean? To make confident decisions in an accounting world and in your role. How do you help people do that? And so there's an explanation of, as an accountant in the future, I see myself helping reduce reproduction, and consumption, because I want to make sure that when I work with clients, I want to help them find ways to save money and to save resources. And so that's her way as an accountant to help with sustainable development goals. Earlier, I think this morning at that wonderful panel, we talked about how do we get not just the STEM or the STEAM profession to look at sustainable development. Here's one example, and I'll also share one more right here. Okay, so Michael, here's your cue for the second one. And while Michael is queuing up, just background around what this video is. So you'll see a video, you'll see one of my students, Aaron, who came into the class and said, I've got multiple interests and I don't know what to do with my life. But I know that most recently I'm really passionate about music and I'm enrolled in this music class. So what you're about to see is a video it's a kickoff video, because as part of the class, they're organizing an entire social justice music festival. So this is the kickoff. I'm gonna warn you, there's some really awesome sass here, but this is an actual piece that Aaron showcased in his e-portfolio, along with the rationale of why it's important. Why are the arts important when you're advocating for social justice? And how does he see in his path to work in the arts? He's still debating, do I become a film documentarian? Do I become a journalist? Do I work in political science? So it's still out there, but he's gotten through identifying this as an artifact for the e-portfolio.
Hey! Oh, hi there. Yoo-hoo! Yeah, you over there. Welcome to the festival. Oh, yeah! I wanted to ask you, what do you believe in? Yeah. What do you stand for? What's important to you? Sports, social media, reality TV?
Netflix?
Grand Theft Auto.
Baking cookies?
Cryptocurrency?
What about global politics? How about social justice? What? I'm sorry? What was that? Did you say, what is social justice? Oh, girl. Well, you came to the right person. Okay, get comfortable and pay attention.
Because we're gonna break this down.
And there's gonna be some sass.
Yep. Lots of sass. Lots of sass. Lots of sass. Lots of sass.
What is
social justice, and what's it all about? It's about privilege and calling it out. The division of resources, creating opportunities, fighting inequalities in our communities. Human rights deficits and freedoms of thought. Racism, discrimination, it's like a blind spot. It's about equality, about being fair. To teach world leaders to learn how to share. Greta Thunberg, go girl. Social justice, Malala Yousafzai. Social justice. Truth and reconciliation. Social justice. Rising cost of living, that needs social justice. Recognition therapy. Social justice. AOC and Zelensky. Social justice. Overturning Roe v. Wade. Social justice. Standing up for human rights. Now that's social justice. That's right.
Okay, and then it kicks off to the music festival. So, Michael, you can stop the video and you can go back. But you can see how leveraging creativity and allowing students to do that in class can open up an entire world of possibilities, and it's about following them and their guidance as well. So in particular with Aaron, it's the idea of like, I want to do a lot of things, but I'm not sure where I want it to go. So seeing what's in the present and leveraging and helping him understand. So the last time I talked to Aaron, because I needed to get his permission to share this video, he have told me, he's like, watching that video has made me realize how very little I know about design and video skills. And I'm already looking at courses beyond graduation that's going to help me with that. And being part of that festival and organizing, emceeing, and producing videos like this has really helped hone his values for social justice. So he knows that whatever he's going to be doing in the future, it plays a big role. To identify areas in inequities and making them right? You can see that reflection that comes. And then information interviews is the final assignment for this course because it takes a lot of time to find people to conduct information interviews. And then they do a reflection. One of the reflective questions that we ask is, how do you think these conversations connect back to the SDGs that you have identified to be important to you from the very beginning? So Corey here, no longer a criminology student, I think he's articling as a lawyer now, is talking about clean water and sanitation. Initially, in the beginning of the course, he wasn't quite sure how it fits with law. But towards the end, as you can see this reflection with the bolded statements is, as I write this, clean water and sanitation might be my reason to pursue law, because having clean water is a basic human right. It's shameful in where I am in Canada, there's some nations and areas that still don't have access to clean water. So we have had extensive conversations about this. And he's leveraging his ability to make legal sound arguments towards what that means for those that, for clients that he's going to represent for the future. So pretty powerful stuff when you think about it. And somebody have said yesterday that like, oh, you know what? Our role as career development professional is to just draw out these talents. Don't underestimate how much work that we do in asking the right questions and in helping make these unlikely relationships and connections happen for those reserved. So in terms of implications, I want us to think about using the Sustainable Development Goals to explore career options. So people like Aaron, who's looking at multiple possibilities, but yet wants to be able to identify one or two that they're moving towards, or students who have found themselves not sure they want to go, but they've signed up for a session with you, or they appear in my classroom. Let's use the SDGs. And there's some really awesome SDG guides that are out there that we can start to look at, okay, what are some of the potential occupations? But I know I'm preaching to the choir. It's not an extensive list. It should always be seen as a start, because what we're not harnessing is students' creativity and the connections that they're making. And then expanding career purpose. So I'm sure you've got clients and students in my class, they've come and said, I want to do this, and that's it. I have, a one-way track to applying for graduate school. Do you have a backup plan? No, that's it. That's all. Okay, so let's talk about what happens. But at the same time, tell me which one of these SDGs are you passionate about, and in their reflection, because I do a course end survey where they say, I'm really glad we started with the SDGs first, because I know if I don't get into the school, my dream school, I know that I've got other possibilities that I can ponder ahead of me as well. So I don't feel as anxious and lost about the uncertainty that is out there in the world. And then one of the things that I've expanded, so we talk about labor market information, how do you conduct research, but I also thought I have a responsibility in helping students identify, in honor of decent work, good companies with strong values that they can find themselves working for. So lately, I've been fascinated by B corporations. So these are corporations that went through a very stringent designation or certification process where, making money is only one part of the equation. They have to demonstrate that they are actively making contribution to the environmental and social realms of our world. So to give you an example, one of my favorites, Patagonia. If you go on their website now, one of the first thing you'll see is their quote is that, we only have one shareholder now. That is Mother Nature. We report to Mother Nature as our shareholder, and because of that, we believe in social justice, caring for the environment, and anytime if your outer, environmental outer gear is broken and it needs fixing, we're going to teach you how to fix it. We don't want you to buy another one because it's not sustainable, but we can help you do that. So Patagonia is one of my favorites. A lot of students really like Ben & Jerry's ice cream, right? So they are looking into, equitable hiring practices, expanding their vegan option line so that it parallels to their non-vegan line. So think about these B corporations, and the reason why I bring this up with my students is if these are value-driven organizations, and I've got, this generation of students that are also quite values driven, that's a natural place to start. And I'm not telling them you need to look for work within these companies, but we do deep dive in understanding what is so compelling about working for these companies and the fact that you need to find alignment to the best of your ability between who you work with, who you work for, and coming together so that they too can recognize that you share their values. So we talked about engagement and longevity if they could, right? So good company to keep there, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. We also started talking about looking at these reports. So the one on the left is the Canadian government, in which they publish an annual report on how we're doing with the SDGs. We do a quick exercise on that, in which we looked at the SDG dashboard and see how Canada is comparing with other nations as well, in which they get to critically think about how is it possible that under SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, the Canadian government is only looking at unemployment statistics. We know this is a group that knows that numbers don't tell the full story, right? Even if, unemployment rate is down, how do we know people are overqualified for their job? Are they happy? Are they happy in their place? Are they engaged in beyond decent and meaningful work? What does that look like? So we engage in a lot of these discussions for them to think about. And we also talk about things like there is, Canadian government has designated an entire division or branch towards advancing the SDGs. So there's a funding program that's available. So if they were to put together a funding proposal, what would that look like? So developing skills along the way is also really important, but having that critical thinking to say, I'm a citizen in this country, and some of the things that you're doing, no matter it's federal, provincial, municipal government, you need to do better. So I know where I'm in, and my son and I, being Harry Potter fans, my favorite professor, Dumbledore, have said things that seem unimaginable today is going to be inevitable tomorrow. feel free to use that quote. It's from the latest Fantastic Beast movie, in which we're really thinking about, okay, well, we can't see what's not happening, but we need to keep a pulse on it. So things like the future of work will be of importance for us to talk about. So let me take you back to this constellation. We've got the SDGs now. I think by the end of this, the last 2 days, you'll be well versed in understanding sustainable development. What are the implications of this work with us in career development? But I want to emphasize, the way that we can expand our field of influence, engage in collective advocacy, is knowing where do we each individually could place an influence on, but talking with one another, what we've done for the last 2 days, and learning about each other's work and the spaces that we play in, we're stronger together. And I often get to say that as the lead in CEREC, and something that I truly believe in. So so I wanted to, so proud to showcase this Hidden Sector, Hidden Talent report by Challenge Factory, commissioned by CEREC to do this. Because to this day, before this report came out, we didn't know how many people work in the career development sector in Canada. And it's thanks to the amazing team in Challenge Factory who discovered that we have a wide range from 40,000 to 60,000. And definitions matter, because they also did an amazing job being inclusive about who else can influence career development. So it's people that we've talked about, researchers in the room, policymakers, people that are funders, people who are parents and educators, and all of those, they all play a role. So please, I encourage you to take a look at this report if you haven't already. One thing I want to draw your attention to very quickly is that iceberg. It seems to be the most impactful with people that I talk with, in seeing, I didn't know these are the people that I could influence. So we can continue to influence that way. So in coming back, wrapping up with this course, I think for me in a little bit, research is going to be my direction. Landing on a 3-year research grant has been a dream in aligning sustainable development goals in the K-12 system, working with educators to embed the K-12, and then my career intervention is coming back to ask these educators, so how has it helped you with your teaching and learning and with your career development? So stay tuned. In the next 3 years, I'll start to disseminate what I'm learning and seeing what we can do together. But at the end of this course, I posed a quick survey, and I asked students, how did embedding the SDGs in this course help you learn about yourself and your career development? So I gather data over 4 semesters, 367 respondents to this quick survey, and I learned that there are 3 levels of reflection. So at the individual level, people have expressed, it's good, I know the things that I'm doing, but it's also very daunting to say that I am responsible for life below water. Like, I don't think any one person can say that I can address that. So it leads to their career contributions. What can they do within their professional communities? That's going to help them. Maybe it's organizing committees that are toward any of the SDGs that they feel passionate about. It's bringing people along the way, but at the very end, that last level there is what we should aim for. It's the community. It's everybody doing this together through our collective efforts day in and day out. That's going to amplify our influence. Does that sound familiar, what we've been doing for the last couple of days, right? And this quote, super powerful, in which a student said, I realized if I want to have a successful career, I need to know, I need to discover, I need to figure out how I can serve the world first. And I'm like, yes, this is why we have this course. This is why I do what I do. Is I love helping students with their career success, but I also want them to think bigger, because everybody has a potential to contribute. And so I'm going to end with some final advice here, and I'm sure you can generate your own. The first one being to embrace lifelong learning and flexibility. We're all here gathered at the NISEC conference. You're already role modeling that very thing. And I wonder how we can get students to continue to do that. And many times I've got students that are like, oh, I'm finishing my undergrad and I'm done. I don't need to learn. I'm like, okay, sit down. Let's have a conversation about that. Fostering hope and empowerment. Remember, hope generates action and action generates hope in that cycle again. So when you have people that you're talking with that feel stuck and anxious about moving forward, how can we help them cultivate hope? How can we help them generate action? And this one, the key to the presentation is integrating values and with career aspirations, connecting the head and the heart to propel action. Advocating for social justice. I'd like to think that when we do the first three things right, we're doing that, and we have to make it accidental to being more intentional. So I'm really excited to see with the three groups in the World Cafe today, what comes out from that conversation. And the last one is just staying collaborative and staying connected in terms of hearing what each other is doing. Which one of the SDGs has your fingerprint on it, and which one of those indicators are you going to work towards for the next little while? So let's have a conversation about that. On Monday, when I got here, I had the amazing opportunity to go see Hamilton, and the insight that came with me goes back to the idea of generation. So anybody who's seen the musical, it's the idea of legacy. You know, the legacy is planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. And I know the invisible can be intimidating, but to me, the work that we're doing might not yield, hopefully could yield more immediate benefits, but we might not get to see it. And that's okay, because our next 7 generations will. And this is my son, he's right here. You can see who is somebody in your life, because you got to make it personal, right? That inspires you in doing this work. So there he is in disbelief, because we have only been listening to the soundtrack in the car and watching it on Disney, but finally seeing the stage and the exceptional musical for the very first time in his life. How do we cultivate a world so that our future generation can be more of themselves? And that's it. I'll leave you with this final quote here, is that our planet, our definition of success in career, I think in the beginning, somebody have said, you know, if we say, I think it was Chris who said, if we say that we're climbing the ladder, that's the only metaphor, we have failed. There's so many more metaphors. I've just, talked to you about the constellation, and I'm sure you can think about 10 more on your way out. But what do we need in addressing the world that we're in is people who live well in their places, people of moral courage to make the world habitable and humane. So we have a responsibility as career folks to be able to do that in our everyday conversations, in our advocacy work, and in our learning with one another. So I'll leave you with that and say a big thank you for having me here. And that QR code will give you the full presentation. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Candy, for that inspiring call to arms to live well in our places. And thank you for coming to this place to share your thoughts with us. Does anybody, everyone's got their cameras up, they all like that.
Open the QR code. Worst case scenario, you now have my email address. We will troubleshoot. And if I do this, make this really big, stop sharing, and then share again, you should have access to it.
Well, I'm sure we can find a way of getting the slides to everybody, but yeah, they're brilliant. I'm sure that's working. Does anybody want to ask any questions, make any comments in response to what we've heard from Candy? You do.
You can ask me at home. Save it for the attendees.
Well, I just really enjoyed hearing that and seeing those examples of your students in action and those reflective accounts. And I took a photo and as the mother of a graduating child, I shall be asking her over dinner at graduation what she's going to do with her life and using those questions. Fiona, you have a question. Yeah, I'm coming.
Yeah, thank you very much, Candy. As you know, we've used your questions in our teaching with our students to get them thinking about the bigger picture. So thank you very much. And you've given me more things to pick up on today as well. So I suppose I'm interested in sort of practical things, really. Do you teach this course on your own, or do you have colleagues who do it with you? Or...
I teach this course on my own.
Yeah.
I've started to train non-career development colleagues because I belong in a Department of Educational Studies. So I work with colleagues who are in, who train the next generation of educators, first year experience courses. So I started to train, I'm the only career person in that, in my departments. So I realized I need to scale up by getting colleagues to come on board. So training the trainer. But I am starting to think that I might invite career services folks to come in and teach some of the career component. So it gives me more space to work on the sustainable development component. So there's co-teaching opportunities. Yeah.
No, that's kind of just wondering about how you in a way, it's very, very much your personality and your values in teaching and how that then translates to other people. So that, thank you, Candy.
Thanks. Yeah, it's always tricky to be thinking about scaling these things, isn't it, as we heard yesterday. Anybody else with a question? No.
Right up front here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen.
Now I've warmed up. Yeah, I don't think you said anything about engaging critically with the Sustainable Development Goals on the course. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about how you facilitate the students' ability to engage critically with them?
Yep.
And bearing in mind that they have a limited lifespan and there are fundamental flaws in the way that they've been assembled and described.
Yeah. So one example that comes to mind is the UN. So we adopt the SDGs, but at the same time, UN as an organization isn't perfect. So one of the things that I take issue with is whenever I see ads from the UN saying, "Oh, we're looking for an intern," they don't pay their interns, right? So I'm like, how are you honoring SDG 8 decent work and economic growth when you don't pay your interns? So in that class, we talk about case studies like this. And we have students who talk, one of the things that I did last semester, I think it's got room for improvement because it didn't go as well as I'd like to, is a debate on what that means. Like, would you take a would you rather get a paid internship with a less prestigious organization, or would you work for UN? Yes or no, knowing that it's not going to be paid, and then you're going to fork out your own pocket. So really interesting conversations from students that are, equal. I think it was equally divided on both sides, but they got to debate, they got to think about, how that comes in. And at the end, I think what was really helpful is I asked, did anybody change their mind as a result of listening to each other's opinions? And there were a few that are like, oh yeah, that switched sides. So that's one way to go about critically examining the SDGs, and of course, even if we look at the B Corp organizations, they're not perfect. There's something there, right? So doing deeper research and understanding why would I not work for this organization? And here's my rationale. Getting students to know that they have agency in their choices. Thanks, Stephen.
Excellent question, thank you. Well, we said that we wanted a conference theme that would give us a chance to engage critically with the idea of career and sustainability and think about it from different angles, including the environment as well as skills and well-being. We wanted to explore whether it's too much to try to put all that under one term, or whether it gives us some creative opportunities. I don't know, do people feel we've achieved that in the course of this conference? Yeah, I think we have. Thank you, Candy, and thank you.